Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The NHL trade deadline has come and gone, and the Rangers have made a couple of deals today. They acquired Jack Roslovic from the Columbus Blue Jackets, and they also acquired Chad Ruhwedel from the Pittsburgh Penguins. So no big splashy trades. This is more similar to the 2022 deadline, which really worked well. Whereas last season it was big names, and that wasn't really the route that I wanted to go. I was totally fine with the Tarasenko-Mikkola deal, but then with Kane, I just think that it wasn't the direction to move into, even though the price point was tolerable in that deal. But the Rangers had some needs, and they tried to address all of them. So we talked about the Alex Wennberg deal a couple days ago, and that the Rangers needed a center, a third-line center, and so they, got him from Seattle. Jack Roslovic is a right wing. He can play a little bit of center, but he, right wing certainly is a better fit on this team. Right-handed shot, and presumably, I think he'll probably start out with Zibanejad and Kreider, at least to start. And the Rangers, in that trade, they trade away a conditional fourth-round pick, a 2026 conditional fourth-round pick, and the condition is it'll move up to a third-round pick in 2026 if the Rangers this year reach the Stanley Cup final and Roslovic plays in 50% of the playoff games. So it's not like an exorbitant, crazy return. And it kind of reminds you a little bit of the Frank Vatrano deal a few years ago with Florida. And that was a fourth-round pick. And we saw what Vatrano did, was really a nice piece to the team that, was pretty close to making it to the final. I think Roslovic, different style player, but I think that he'll fill a role that is important. There was a lot of other directions that they could have maybe went in. It seemed like they were deep in discussions for Jake Guentzel, but ultimately he was traded to Carolina, which is significant because Carolina is obviously the main competition in the Metropolitan Division with the Rangers. There was talks about reacquiring Frank Vatrano, but I don't think that would have been the way to go. To have given up like a first-round pick for Vatrano, I know he's under contract next year. I would not have agreed with that, even though I liked what he did a couple seasons ago. It did seem like there was a chance of maybe Max Pacioretty coming over from the Capitals, but ultimately I think what happened was he had a no movement clause, and he decided not to waive it. He wanted to stay with Washington, and I'm sure there was a lot of other players the Rangers were in on, but as far as Roslovic is concerned, this is someone, he's really like a 40 to 50 point player. So this season, 40 games, 6 goals, 17 assists, 23 points. So you prorate that, double it, it's 80 games, it's about 46 points. Now, Columbus has been struggling. I'd say that he's probably one of their better forwards, definitely more offensive-minded for sure. Whereas Wennberg, the Wennberg deal, expect to see Wennberg more like on the penalty kill. Maybe he'll get a little bit of second power play time. I think with Roslovic for sure. Roslovic will definitely be on that second unit in the power play, and he's going to get very key top 6 ice time. Roslovic was drafted by the Winnipeg Jets in 2015. He was a first-round pick, and he was the 25th overall in that draft. And there's always been a lot of potential with him, and it's taken him some time. He was teammates with Jacob Trouba. We're going to talk about Trouba a little bit more later in this episode. Some news on him, but Roslovic, started out, I guess, kind of slow with Winnipeg. He played 10 games when Winnipeg reached the Western Conference Final. He played 10 games in that run. Ultimately, he was traded a few seasons later, before the 2020-2021 season. He was dealt in the deal, the Patrick Laine, Pierre-Luc Dubois trade. He was in that, and was a notable piece in the deal. And him going from Winnipeg to Columbus definitely was good for him. Now, interestingly enough, Jack Roslovic is from Columbus. I believe he must have grown up a Blue Jacket fan, I would think. So for him, I'm sure there's a little bit mixed feelings. the fact that, I mean, he is going to be, I should also say, he is going to be a free agent at the end of the season, so he is a rental. But, I'm sure he's excited to be on a team that, is going to make the playoffs and has a chance to do some things, whereas Columbus, obviously their season was going nowhere. But him going to Columbus seemed to have helped. I mean, he had 34 points in 48 games in 2021, had 45, had 22 goals, 45 points in the 2022 season. So, this is someone that I think there is in some ways untapped potential. Like he's still, what is he, 27 at this point? Yeah, just turned 27 actually, not too long ago. So interested in seeing what he can bring to the table. And for me, out of the 3 deals that were made, this one is the most intriguing, the one that I like the most. And he is more, even though he's a right wing, but he can play some center. He is more pass first. He is more, but look, on a line with Zibanejad and Kreider, that could be a good fit because Mika, when he's right, has that great shot. And as we know, obviously Kreider is certainly more of a shot first player. So the fit, you just hope that the fit is right with them. Because personally, I would prefer him there than Kakko. And so we may as well discuss like the forward lines. So as I see it, and these things will probably change, you have Kreider, Zibanejad, Roslovic, Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere. The third line for me, I spoke about it in the Wenberg episode. I would prefer it to be Cooley, Wenberg, Kakko. And then the fourth line will probably be, it'll certainly be VZ and Goodrow. And then who's going to be the third person? It would appear to either be Brodzinski or Rempe. So the Rangers sent down Adam Edstrom, which isn't surprising. It's not completely fair. But because it was really going to come down to either Rempe or Edstrom, and there's just so much fanfare with Rempe, and so I think you like to think that doesn't go into their decision making because let's be honest, Edstrom, while maybe not by much, and Rempe's not been bad, but Edstrom is probably better. But I get it, and these things aren't set in stone. So like I said, it'll be interesting, right? Like tomorrow night versus the St. Louis Blues, who is the healthy scratch? It would either be Rempe or Brodzinski. You would think it'd be Rempe, like as much as I don't have a problem with scratching Brodzinski, like and he certainly should not have been the third line center. It doesn't mean that you necessarily just take him out of the lineup outright, but it is possible. And I think just based on, name value and, because that does go into it, right? Because then to me, like, Goodrow, he's always going to be in the lineup. He's never going to be a scratch, which isn't necessarily fair. I know he's like a top penalty killer on the team, but long story short, the lines, they seem fairly set. And if Roslovic and Wenberg can really do their job with the roles that they have, this will make the team better. Maybe not by leaps and bounds, but definitely better. And I should mention that really Roslovic, he is kind of a replacement of Blake Wheeler, but also an improvement. But with the current Blake Wheeler, as in, what we saw this season with the Rangers. I think Roslovic, there's just more speed, and that's the key here. Roslovic, speed. Wenberg, fairly good skater. Also good zone entry players. Like they can carry the puck and possess the puck, and that will be important for sure. Now let's talk about the other trade. Chad Ruhwedel, longtime Pittsburgh Penguin, Ruhwedel. He is acquired. So a couple of divisional trades, right? Roslovic from Columbus, Ruhwedel from Pittsburgh. Chad Ruhwedel was acquired for a 2027 fourth round pick. So is he worth the fourth round pick? I'd say probably not. Like, if we're being honest, I think Ruhwedel's probably more of a fifth or sixth round pick. Like, definitely maybe closer to sixth. But the fact that it's a 2027, I think probably boosts up the round a little bit. Like if this had been a 2024, I don't think it would have been a fourth round pick. But so it's 4 drafts down the line. Not going to make a huge deal about it, But like I said, fourth round pick, probably a little bit too rich. But at this time of the year, depth defensemen are very valuable. And the Rangers surely needed it. So let's talk about Jacob Trouba. It's been announced that he'll be out 2 to 3 weeks with a lower body injury. He hadn't practiced the last 2 practices. I don't think it was anything that happened in the last game versus Florida. Like, at least what I think it is, I think it's probably a bit of load management or like wear and tear. And it's like, hey, like, let's, while we have, this part of the season, we'll, sit Troop out for, a large stretch of March, maybe the rest of March. And I really have no problem with it. Look, and if he got hurt last game, he got hurt last game. But I wouldn't be surprised if they've known about this and now you bring Ruhwedel in and you can kind of stomach it more. So now what I'm interested in seeing is Miller with Schneider. So that's going to happen. And in the short sample size, they've actually been a pretty good pair. And I would love for them to kind of just take it and run with it. The problem is this: when Trouba comes back, he's like, they're just going to put him back with Miller, as good as it would be. So it's kind of fool's gold, but I hope that they do well. And so what then happens is it'll be Gustafsson with Ruhwedel or Zach Jones. Like, as far as tomorrow night goes, it could be Jones if they feel as if, like, Ruhwedel, they want to sort of get him more acclimated. I mean, he's a veteran. Like, I would think he'd be the one in the lineup. But Zach Jones has been with the team all year long. When he's been in there recently, he hasn't been horrible. So that could go either way. But I think in a situation where the games matter, not to say tomorrow night's game doesn't matter, but once it does, like, let's say come playoff time, I think Ruhwedel is more of your seventh defenseman. But Zach Jones is there because they don't want to wait. They cannot waive him. Otherwise, he would potentially be claimed. And so they want to keep him on the roster. But look, Jones is a left-handed defenseman, Ruhwedel right-handed, so I like that too. Look, he's a third pair guy, Ruhwedel, and really he would be someone that when he's in the lineup, he would probably get some penalty kill time. Like, when I was looking at his ice time with Pittsburgh, like, a lot of it, he always was one of their main penalty kill players. But his time on ice, not a whole hell of a lot, like 12 minutes, overall 12 minutes a game, 13 minutes a game. So definitely sheltered minutes, but kind of like, in looking at his numbers, not a whole lot of offense to speak of. I do think, like, he moves the puck well. I mean, just in thinking about games against Pittsburgh, I think he's a decent puck mover, if nothing else. Not the biggest in terms of stature, which I kind of thought that the Rangers would maybe do that. So again, the equivalent here to 2022, again, not in terms of size, because Justin Braun had a little bit more bulk to him and was a little bit of a bigger body, but that's kind of what this is, where, and Braun ended up having a pretty big role, right? Because he ended up taking Nemeth, it ended up being Braun and Schneider. Ruhwedel won't be like that, but hey, like, A, injuries happen, B, crazier things have happened. Like, if somehow, like, Gustafsson or Schneider somehow are struggling. Again, I doubt it, but you can't rule out Ruhwedel, being in there. He has been with the Penguins for a while, since the 16-17 season. That was the Penguins' second cup in 2 years. They won back-to-back. Ruhwedel was on that cup team and actually did play in 6 of those. I mean, not a whole lot, but, he did play 6 of those games in the playoffs. So he has won a cup before. Has a lot of playoff experience, and actually played in all 7 of the Rangers-Penguins games in that 7-game series from 2022. So this is not nothing by any means, even though I don't agree with the 4th-round value. Like I said, it's 2027. So I knew the Rangers needed to add someone who with legitimacy, depth-wise, for defense. And I think Penguin fans, it's like a good riddance thing. I think that it seems like they weren't the biggest Ruhwedel fans. And that makes sense. Like, this is not someone to write home about. He had actually started his career with the Sabres, undrafted. He's 33. So, he is kind of the elder statesman on the defense. Rangers have a mostly young defense. Gustafsson's a veteran, and obviously Trouba, now, and he's the captain, of course. But, Ruhwedel spent a lot of seasons. What is it? 3, 4, 5, 6. 8 seasons with the Penguins. So change of scenery for him. And, we'll see if he's in the lineup tomorrow night. But yeah, Trouba's going to be out for 2 to 3 weeks. And so, he'll certainly be in there a good amount of time in that stretch. So I guess the comparison, in terms of the 2022 draft with Wenberg, I guess would be Andrew Kopp. Although Wenberg is going to be playing center here, whereas Kopp, he mainly when I think about his time with the Rangers, it was Panarin, Strome in the middle, Cup on the right side. But that would be Wenberg really, the most was given up for him. And again, that's why centers are that more valuable. So even though Roslovic is going to be more in the top 6, whereas Wenberg slots in as third line center, that was the biggest deal that was made in the last few days was the Wenberg one. But going to be interesting to see what happens. And, I like what Chris Drury did. Was I hoping for something more? I was, but the Rangers don't have let's talk about draft picks just to wrap this up. The Rangers really don't have, they have no, and I mentioned this last episode, no second round picks for the next 3 years. They don't have a third round pick the next 2 years. They don't have a fourth round pick in 25, 26, and 27. So from rounds 2 through 4, it's barren. And hopefully you can replenish that somewhere along the line with, dealing players out. And maybe that happens in the offseason. Who knows? But the one good thing is, and the most important thing is, they have all their first round picks intact. They need that because you can't strip it completely bare. So, that I'm glad. And their main prospects, Gabe Perreault, Brennan Othman, Adam Sikora, Brett Berard, on and on, all still there. So I think I mostly feel good about it because I'm more of the belief of, try to find guys that can fill these roles. It doesn't have to be big names. These are not big names. Does it mean it's going to work out? No. But I like that it seems like they took more of a page from the 2022 book than the 2023 book. And only time will tell how successful it is. But again, trade deadline is over. Rangers make a couple of acquisitions. Of course, Alex Wenberg a few days ago, and then today they bring in Jack Roslovic and Chad Ruhwedel.